Right, well done, guys. You've stuck with it this far. Let's go for the big finish now. So, yes, textiles. Um, I'll be honest, textiles is not my area of expertise, so the knowledge I have is quite limited. But luckily, it's about the same as the knowledge you need for this topic, which is very, very much surface level. So, oh wow, look at that! I've not changed the names, have I? So yes, this should say natural, and then on the next page, what's synthetic? Right. Okay, so natural textiles. These are textiles that are sourced from obviously natural sources. So cotton comes from little cotton plants that grow in fields, and then you have to harvest the cotton, then you spin it into what's called yarn, and then yarn is then can be weaved, or sorry, can be woven into sort of sheet fabric. Then you get cotton in rolls. Wool comes from sheep or goats, and yeah, when they have their fleeces, and they come in fleeces. So yeah, when the goats or the sheep have been sheared for the summer, yeah, their fleeces are harvested, and then they can be processed and spun as well into yarn, and then that can be knitted or woven together as well. Silk is interesting. Silk actually comes from silk worms. Yeah, which is kind of weird. Like, yeah, so you basically get massive silk farms, and the silkworms just generate this very fine thread. So, fun fact with silk is that one strand of silk is stronger than one strand of stainless steel, which is quite interesting. So, its tensile strength is ridiculous. That's why it's really good for things like parachutes, because it's so lightweight. It's like crazy lightweight, and it can be so thin, but its tensile strength when it's woven is ridiculously strong. So even things like ropes and things can be made from silk, and they are crazy strong in terms of the loads that they can hold. So wool's superpower essentially is that it's a really good insulator. It'll keep you warm in very cold environments, and even when you're wet or when the wool is wet, it never really feels that wet. It just has a slightly damp feel to it. It's kind of weird. Um, so and it will still keep you warm even when you're wet and if it's been raining. Cotton is has a very high level of absorbency. So yeah, it absorbs moisture very easily. So if it rains, your t-shirt will very quickly become wet, and then yeah, then you'll probably start to feel a bit cold because it doesn't have any insulative properties when it's cold. However, it's very strong, and yeah, and it can be washed at very high temperatures, and it doesn't deform. So yeah, big cotton is probably the most commonly used one. It's used in like the obviously t-shirts, trousers, denim jackets, like um, even bed sheets and like fishing nets and stuff like that. It's used for so many things. Let's look at synthetics then. So you've probably heard of some of these, like whether it's polyester, nylon, or lycra. Now these are interesting because they come from crude oil sources. So they're not brilliant for the environment. However, they are very good in terms of being very long lasting. So a polyester t-shirt, like a sports top like this, just won't degrade. It will last for literally forever. And they hold color really well. Like you can get very vivid colors printed onto these, and they're very easy to print onto as well. Um, yeah, and they actually they're very strong. Like polyester tops like this are incredibly strong, and they're really good at getting rid of moisture. They have a very low absorbency rate, so they tend to. That's why you often find that sports tops are always find sports tops are made from synthetic fibers now because they get rid of moisture very quickly. We call that wicking. They wick moisture away from your body, so they keep you dry. And they're also really strong, and they're often waterproof. Like nylon here can be woven very tightly so that it can be then yeah, it can then be waterproof, and it's very strong, especially in terms of tensile strength. So things like tents are great. Using nylon is a great application for that. Yeah, and it doesn't absorb moisture. It stays strong even when it is wet. Yeah, and this is actually a thermoplastic base, so it can be heat set as well. Then the last one is lycra. Lycra, you probably imagine as being synonymous with like very tight fitting clothing. So that's why I've got a picture of a cycling jersey and cycling shorts there. So yeah, lycra is good because it's very stretchy. So it can fit around your body and get a sort of very close, tight fit. So for things like cycling or athletic wear, it's actually very good at doing that. Then the last one is you get sort of blends and mixtures. Now, these days, especially with cheaper clothes, the fibers and yarns that are used are seldom actually pure. They're often like they're not often pure cotton. They're often a mixture or what we call a blend. So you might get, say, t-shirts that are a blend of cotton and nylon, for example, or polyester and cotton. Like your school shirts are probably, in fact, they're almost 100% like, sorry, not 100%, I almost 100% guarantee they are not pure cotton. They'll be like sort of, I don't know, 80% cotton, then 20% nylon or polyester or something like that. The only trouble is the higher the synthetic content in clothing, the easier it becomes stinky. So you sometimes find if you've got some like cheap like sports tops that are made from synthetics, you find you only need to wear them for like, I don't know, 15 minutes, it feels like, out in the sun on a hot day, and it already starts smelling pretty bad. So that's because they hold bacteria very badly. Okay, so we've got blended fibers. Now, the ways we've got to joining fibers together are we've got weaving, which is done on a loom. And with this, you have what's called the warp and the weft. Now, goodness knows why you need to know this, but the warp are the threads that go up and down on the loom, and then the weft is the one that goes side to side. So use this thing called a shuttle, which is that little wooden thing that slides between each warp fiber, and it makes the links. Think of weft as in left, as in it goes left and right on the shuttle there. Then the selvage is the sort of finished edge you get coming from the end of the weaving process. Felting is just using any old scraps of leftover. Imagine this is the MDF of fabrics. It's like using any old leftover fibers and then literally just squishing them together. And you can use like a felting needle like this, and it just sort of keeps pricking the fibers together, and it's little bit like a sort of Velcro effect. And you can use it for making like either felt matting, or you can make little sort of like three-dimensional things like, I mean, this nice little penguin here. Another method is knitting. Knitting is commonly done with wool. So we've got spun yarn. You can then knit it. And knitting is like it's a much larger scale way of linking yarn together than weaving. Weaving makes a very, very tight knit, as it were, very tight weave, whereas knitting is much looser. And because wool is a generally much looser yarn anyway, has a much lower tensile strength, knitting is more suited to knitting. So knitting is synonymous with like very thick knit patterns, and it's good for winter wear and stuff. And there's a couple of videos here showing just how weaving works on a loom, and then showing felting as well.